Wildlife Center means to me a community of people who care about wildlife and wildlife issues, who are coming together on a daily basis, 365 days a year, to help wildlife in so many different ways.
Be it urban or suburban, rural, anywhere, wildlife is important. It's important to care about any living creature.
You have to remember that they were here long before we humans were.
I think as a species, the human species that has decided to build our lives and our communities in somebody else's already existing territories, it's almost our obligation to make sure that we live with them cooperatively.
The reason that they come in are usually because of some sort of negative interaction with people.
As a result of our actions, as a result of our homes, our windows,
Our buildings and our roads, sometimes cruelty, unfortunately, or even a lack of understanding about wild species from people.
we are causing injuries to these animals. So it is our responsibility to make sure that we take care of them when we can.
TWC is really about giving back and helping them out and giving them a second chance of life that they might not have had otherwise.
And undo some of this damage that is being done and try to make things a little bit better for them and the community. I started Toronto Wildlife Center because I was shocked to learn that there was basically no organization to help wildlife and to help people with wildlife issues. Toronto Wildlife Center opened its first location, a very small location, in March of 1993. We pretty quickly became the busiest wildlife center in the country, and we are now one of the busiest wildlife centers on the continent. Toronto Wildlife Center operates pretty much entirely on donations. We don't get government funding. We've admitted well over 100,000 animals since we first opened. We've also worked with a little over 300 different species of wildlife. So our 5 core programs, which have stayed our 5 core programs for a really long time, are the Wildlife Hotline, our Wildlife Rescue Program, our Veterinary Hospital, which is specialized to work with wild animals, our Wildlife Rehabilitation Program, and then a public education program, which reaches out to the public in a huge variety of different ways.
The Wildlife Hotline team helps our community by acting as a resource for what to do when faced with a wildlife situation. Our wildlife staff go through over a year of training, so they relay that information to members of the public and guide them on what next steps should be taken. So in some cases, it may be containing the animal and bringing them to our center. Other times, it may be trying to reunite a baby with its parent. We also coordinate all the details for our wildlife rescue team to go out onto the scene.
Our rescue department, and the way it's structured, is the only one of its kind in Canada. We have to do different trainings and certifications, and there's a lot of specific equipment that we've acquired over the years. But I think maybe one of my favorite things is when equipment doesn't exist, we take our knowledge about the animals and their natural behavior, and we'll make our own thing. So going out on rescue can be a number of things, but the scenario is always changing. When we bring that animal back through the doors and hand it over to the wildlife hospital team, it's a whole new journey for that animal, and that's really where the incredible things happen.
Toronto Wildlife Center was the first wildlife center in Canada to have a hospital on site that specifically treated wildlife and had veterinarians and veterinary technicians on staff. We are actually an accredited veterinary hospital as well. We have x-rays, we have ultrasound, we have an endoscope, so we're able to provide that veterinary care at a high level to them. The veterinary team worked very closely with the wildlife rehabilitation team. Once the medical issues have been addressed, the animals are not ready to be released. They still need to show that they can survive in the wild. We need to keep them healthy and safe while they're in our care, and that really falls on the wildlife rehab department.
So with over 300 different species admitted, they all require specialized care. So rehabilitation team needs to understand the natural history of all of those species, provide them species-specific diets and enclosures that will help to minimize stress. So not only is it individualized for the species as a whole, but then for each individual patient. The ultimate goal would be to promote healing and recovery, and that way we can return the animal back into the wild as quickly as possible and give them the best chance of survival.
So Toronto Wildlife Centre isn't just about rescuing animals. It's also about educating our community on how we can peacefully coexist with them and hopefully how to avoid a lot of the circumstances that lead to the animals coming into Toronto Wildlife Centre in the first place. We will go out to schools, community groups. People want to do the right thing. We just have to educate them on what that right thing is and the best ways to help wildlife.
Some of the current challenges that Toronto Wildlife Centre faces is absolutely keeping up with the demand from the community and the need of all those sick, injured, and orphaned wild animals.
Certainly, just the fact that we are the only wildlife center of our kind in the entire province, and in fact, really in the entire country, is a challenge in itself. I think our message to the community is that we should be living in balance with nature, and it is difficult sometimes to remember that when you're in the heart of downtown Toronto in a traffic jam, or maybe you're living out in the suburbs where there's just sprawling development everywhere.
But each of us as individuals can take very small steps that lead to a really big impact for our wild neighbors.
So it's our opportunity here at TWC to give back to these animals.
I think that as a community, watching our donors, watching our supporters rally around us, them being so involved in helping those animals, we really could not do it without all of the community support that we get. They're the driving force behind Toronto Wildlife Centre and what we do.
It's important to protect those other beings of our planet, and hopefully we can all work together to do that.